Hi, thanks so much for supporting this What, Why, How presentation from Celia. This is the first in 16 presentations. It is absolutely outstanding. I'm really looking forward to the rest. I'm so happy that you're on board with this. And for every single one of these sessions, Celia is producing an optional guide. You don't have to have this, but they are absolutely exceptionally good quality, really well detailed, and you can download and keep these, download and print these, so they're yours to keep.
Hi everyone, this is a lovely lunch and learn session, so when you put in the chat where you're from, you can also tell me what you're having for lunch and I can read that afterwards and make me really hungry. I'm not going to chatter too much because it is just a short 1 hour session, and as Mark has already said and you will have read in the blurb, this is really to focus and concentrate on sort of specific aspects of Photoshop. It's not going to be me going off and doing a whole load of different image editing. We're going to take each tool or each aspect, really look at it in detail, and I'll try to give you the what, the how, and the why. What is it? How does it work? Why should I use it? And what could I use it for? So rather than me showing you lots of slides on the screen, I'm going to open Photoshop up straight away. Really, bacon and egg and mushroom, fantastic. I'm already starving. Please don't do it anymore. It's not good. Okay. Really good to have your feedback as well as to whether it's too basic, whether it's just filling in gaps, whether you're learning loads of new stuff, just so that we get an idea of how we can gauge this for the upcoming 15 further workshops in this series. Okay, let me share my screen, people. And hopefully one of you will let me know that you are looking at Photoshop's opening screen.
We can see that clearly. If anybody wants to use their thumbs in the React, that's great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Celia.
Okay, now I'm a Windows user, so if you're on a Mac, we just need to get you to have a look at your screens as well, because there will be some subtle differences between a Windows Photoshop opening screen and a Mac opening screen. And although most of the menus, toolbars, panels, and other areas that we're going to look at will have exactly the same functionality, you may find that there are one or two things which are subtly different. What I really want you to do in this workshop is to look at your screen, to really look at your screen. We're all so good at going, yep, I want to do this next. And you rattle off to that particular area. But look at your screen. Have a look around the outside of the Photoshop opening screen. Does yours look like that? Or does yours look completely different? Has Photoshop upgraded it since you last switched it on? But have a really good look at it. Because where we're going to start is across the top. If you're a Windows user, your menus won't look quite the same as mine, and you will have a Photoshop menu across the top. So there will be some differences there. Just make sure that you can see that. And Mark will immediately, who's also on a Mac, will be able to pick up any variations or differences. We'll be using those menus, of course. You've got your Photoshop logo on the left-hand side. But when you click the Photoshop logo, it does that. You lose your home screen. And when you want to get back to your home screen, most people don't want to, but the home screen's really useful. When you want to get back to your home screen, have a look down at the left-hand side of the default interface for Photoshop. And regardless of which tool you have got selected down that left-hand side, whether it be the Move tool that's selected, the Lasso tool, each one of those will have immediately, I hope, displayed its options or properties for that tool. But more importantly, on the far left of that will be the little house button. And when you click the home button, that's going to take you back to your home screen. Be interested to know whether you love or hate the home screen, whether you don't even have it switched on, you've bypassed it in your settings. So we'll have a look at that in just a second. And by the way, for those of you that like your keyboard, if you do want to get rid of that home screen, just press the escape key in the top left-hand corner of your keyboard. So how do we close and open the home screen? We've looked at that. Now what I want to do is just to get you to move across to the right-hand side of the top of the interface. 4 buttons on a Windows option. If we click the cloud button, this would show me all of the files that I have chosen to save into my Adobe account as opposed to save locally. I can click it to show it to you. I don't use it very much, but when I click on the cloud, it will just tell me exactly how much space I have used and whether or not any files that I have saved are fully synced and backed up with the Adobe system. If you click the search button, which I'm about to do, we can search through for any file which you've given a specific name, or even if you just know what its file number is. I'm just going to search for a tulip. So as I enter the word tulip and press the enter key, Adobe's doing a couple of things. Of course, as a trainer, I made sure that I put a tulip file in there so it would actually return something. So there is a tulip image, and that would show me that I'd recently opened it. But it's also showing me some of the more useful stock images that you might want to make use of. And you can make use of Adobe's stock files and not pay for them and just use them for your own practice purposes. And I'll come across to that to you later on. I'm just going to hit the exit button in the top left-hand corner. Has anybody learned anything new at all? Or are you all going for the black coffee to keep you going for the rest of this workshop?
No, I think this is really, I didn't even know you could just use escape to skip past this.
Yeah.
Keep going, keep going.
And for those of you that are actually just curious as to what Photoshop is currently bombarding you with, what's new, what they've added since you last opened up, have a look at the very clever icon. These are our gifts to you, said Mr. Adobe. But in actual fact, if you clicked on this, it would show you what's new in the version that you're currently working on. I'm just going to X out of that particular screen. And then, of course, you've also got the option to have a look at your account. So the button on the right-hand side, when I click it, is going to open a completely separate window. And it's just opening up on another screen. And this is taking me into my Adobe account, showing me how much I'm paying, how much, etc., etc. So lots and lots of useful buttons just up there to start with. This is a separate window, so I'm quite safe to close this down without inadvertently exiting out of the Zoom meeting, which I have a habit of doing at the moment. Any questions on that one before I move on to the next screen?
No problems on there. Thank you. Sorry, no questions on there. Thank you.
Okay. So Adobe, of course, are always going to be pushing more and more helpful information at you. So the first strip across the home screen is really to give you the option of starting something new. So they'll give you a quick option to create a brand new image. So we won't do that at the moment, but have a look at these, because for those of you that quickly put together social media images, you might want to create an image using social media, which is giving you, of course, the default resolution for social media, 72 pixels per inch, and also the screen size for working with mobiles, for example. Or you can just generate a brand new landscape image and start from scratch. They're also pushing, of course, their generative data, their AI data from Generative Image. This is where you'll be able to enter prompts and create something completely from scratch. But there's some really useful videos and tutorials and articles. So don't just bypass them. Have a good look. And I often will click on those and go, oh, I didn't realize you could do that with that particular tool. Lots of useful stuff comes up in these three little boxes on the right-hand side. And then we come down to the files that you've worked on recently. Now, I have mine set up so that it will actually show me the last 100 files that I've worked on. Often because if I'm running workshops, I want to be able to get to files from different workshops, but also if I'm doing lots of editing, I can look down through a whole series of files going back over several weeks, and you'll see all of my different files that I've worked on recently. So in a moment, we'll look at some of Photoshop's preferences so that you can change the default, which is just to show the last 20 files, and you can actually show up to 100 files if it would be useful for you. You've also got an option on the right-hand side of the screen in the middle, just to view those recent files, either as tiles or as a list. I'll just click on the list option, and that gives me just a little bit more information. How big is that file? What file type is it? When did I last open it? So just a bit of more useful information there. I prefer to look at the tiles. after all, we're looking at images. Let's look at pictures. You've also got a filter option. We can click in here and you can type into here. So I know that I was looking at some tulip images, so I can filter my recently opened images through the filter option. I'll just close that on the right-hand side and bring these back again. So I just want to talk to you about preferences for a moment. Preferences are the way that you customize and change the behavior of your application. And as a previous college and university lecturer, can I just advise you, if you're going to change the settings, could you get yourself a notebook? Could you date the page in your notebook? And could you write down why you changed the settings on the date that you changed them? I can't tell you how useful it's going to be when in 6 months' time you go, why doesn't mine do that? You flip back through your notebook and that's why you changed that setting. So you can now completely ignore that because every one of my students for the last 30 years has ignored that piece of information. I'll just move on. Let's go and have a look at the settings. So if you're a Photoshop Mac user, you'll have a Photoshop menu at the top. And that menu, Photoshop, will give you access to your settings. Windows users, you'll need to select the edit menu. And I say settings because I've been teaching Affinity. Settings for Affinity, preferences for Photoshop. Right at the bottom of the Windows users edit menu, you'll find your preferences. And I just want to take you into the general screen. And we could have pressed Control and K or Command and K to get to these preferences. Now, just a word of warning on this particular one. I've got a tick box on my general settings for always show the home screen. For those of you that really dislike it, do be a little bit careful. If you decide, that's how we switch it off. If you switch it off, it does also clear out your recent file list. So when you go to File and open recent, you might find it doesn't repopulate until you start working again. So just be a wee bit careful on that auto show the home screen. And also, I like to have a look at more than just 20 files. So if you go down to another option here under file handling, you'll find right at the bottom of the file handling, the recent file list contains, and 100 is the maximum that you can set that to, but you can change that here without any problems at all. I'm going to click OK and come out of these two boxes. I'm going to keep dipping in and out of this over the next 16 weeks and just keep picking out 2 or 3 preferences, explaining them, and just getting you to try them out where appropriate. Okay, now I'm going to stay on the home screen just for a few more seconds and just look at the left-hand side of the screen. I'm sorry, guys, would you believe I've managed to put my reading glasses on and I'm having to do all of this completely by feel. That's better, I can actually see what I'm doing now. I mean, my driving glasses rather than my reading glasses. Okay, so your side panel. I'm sure you're quite familiar with this, but if you want to open a file already located on any folder that you can access. So this is not for those of you that work through Lightroom or Bridge. This is for those of you that store your files in folders. When you click the open option, you'll navigate to your Windows Explorer or your Finder in order to be able to find files that you can then open. The home button is where we are at the moment. Also, we've got the Learn button. I'll just click the Learn button just in case you've never done it before. Really useful tutorials, videos, etc., which you can search through. I'll come back to going down this list. And then we've got this Files option. So your files, I'm going to click on. These are files that are actually stored in the cloud that you've chosen to save into the Adobe account. These are not the files that you've saved recently. Do be careful about how much you put into the cloud because you'll easily gobble up the gigabytes of space that Adobe have provided for you. And how about this one? For those of us that perhaps will get to know each other really well over the next 16 weeks, we can share files with each other. I can click the shared with you option and I would be able to see nobody shared anything with me, but we can set files up and share them with each other with email accounts, etc. And you're able to open my files and edit them if I give you permissions, and I can do the same with yours. So the shared area is really useful in Adobe. Obviously, it was set up for corporate work where lots of people in one organization want access to each other's graphics, but it works just as well outside and across it with our own email accounts. You've also got the option to have a look at your Lightroom files, which those are Lightroom files that would be on the Lightroom web or Lightroom on your desktop. And if you've deleted any files through the Adobe account, you'll be able to get back to those. Any questions? Have you learned anything new at all about this, or are you guys happy with the overview?
No, we are loving this, absolutely loving it. We've got a question about toolbars, but I'm going to hold on to it because it's not quite linked to what we're talking about at the moment. So I've just asked that person for a bit more detail. But we're loving this, Celia.
Okay, so either from my home screen, I can go and find that tulip image, or of course I can click the open option and navigate to the folders. Because I managed to completely mess up all my files earlier on, I'm hoping that if I click the home button and then try and find my tulip, of course I should be using my search facility, I will click on that tulip image and it will immediately open it. I'm using JPEGs for this particular workshop this morning, and I've just opened it. And I'm going to start by just talking to you about some basic zooming. Keyboard shortcuts coming up, people. Control key for Windows, Command key for Mac users. Hold it down. If you press the 0, it's going to bring your image to full screen, or rather the size of your window. If you press Control or Command and 1, you're going to be able to view your image at exactly 100%. Control and plus on your keyboard will zoom it up even further, and Control and the subtract key will allow you to zoom in and out in increments. Okay. Is your toolbar visible? This is the area that runs by default down the left-hand side of your screen. So I'm wiggling my mouse up and down over that left-hand side. If it's not, then we need to look at where all of the different tools are switched on and switched off. And everything's going to come from the Windows menu. That's the same for Mac users and Windows users. So the window menu, we come down to the bottom. There are 3 options for Windows users, 4 for Mac users. Options, tools, and contextual taskbar are the 3 that we want to focus on today. And Mac users will have another one, which I think is application frame, if I remember rightly. And I'll try to talk about that in a second. So as long as these tick boxes are on, you will be able to see the contextual taskbar, the tools down the left-hand side, and the options bar across the top of the interface under the menu, which gives you the different properties for each of the tools that you're going to select. And you'll also notice that it tells you which file you're working on. You might think, that's sort of helpful, but if you've got 4 or 5 files on the go, it's a really nice way of being able to navigate to different files that are open as well. And as we move into Photoshop and look at some of the more advanced features, I also am dying to show you that when you select the Arrange menu later on, and you click this button here, New Window for Tulip, you'll be able to work with that tulip in 2 separate windows, being able to look at them at different zoom sizes and all sorts of different ways. So lots of exciting things coming up. But let's look at these 3 buttons from the window menu. So if I click on Tools, I've lost my toolbar. And I'm going to go back to the Windows menu and reactivate it by just clicking on it. Okay, so the toolbar. Do you like the toolbar where it is? When you think about the fact that the majority of panels in Photoshop actually come up on the right-hand side, would it be more sensible to have your tools over on the right-hand side as well? So you can pick up the toolbar just on its little tiny header bar across the top and pick it up and drag it across the screen. Now, I don't know if Zoom's being kind enough to us today to show you a blue.
We can see that really clearly. Yeah. So
when that blue bar comes up, I've still got the mouse firmly held down with my left-hand mouse button. When I release the mouse, I can dock the toolbar if it would be more useful on the right-hand side. totally your choice. I actually have got so used to having mine on the left that I'm going to drag mine back to the left. But before I drop it there, if I release the mouse before it goes back to its docked position, you'll notice that there is a set of caret symbols, or the two triangles pointing to the right. When you click that, it actually puts the toolbar into two columns. And again, people quite like it in that particular orientation. Your choice, of course. I'm just going to dock mine back by holding it down against the left edge of the screen. And you can decide whether you want it in one column or two. Let's put it back to the default setting. So I'll click the caret symbols pointing to the left, and we'll just pop it back to one column. Now, if you've decided to have a look at the slides that I've put together for this workshop, which you can purchase separately, it does look on this particular slide, on slide number 5, that I'm trying to show you how to get a really high score in Scrabble. And if you look down at the halfway down that slide, you can see that I've given you all the keyboard shortcuts for V, M, L, W, C, etc. So when you want to activate any one of those tools, if you prefer to use the keyboard, which, let's face it, is much better for your RSI than using the mouse, then just press any one of the letters that are listed on my shortcuts and it'll activate the appropriate tool. I'm just going to move that out of the way. So if I was looking, for example, for the brush tool, I would press the letter B on my keyboard and immediately the brush tool would be activated. You can also hold down the Shift key on your keyboard and press the brush, the B. Also, if you hold down the mouse hard over the brush tool, you'll see the hidden tools that are behind it: the mixer brush, the colour replacement, the pencil, and the brush. So learn to pick up the keyboard shortcuts if you want to navigate quickly between the different tools down the left-hand side, and look at the ones that have got the little tiny triangle on them, because they've got more tools hidden behind them. Are you short of a few tools? Don't know. Let's find out. Down that toolbar, you'll find 3 dots, and this takes us into the Customize toolbar section. I'm going to click on the little arrow so that I can edit the toolbar. But you'll also notice that 2 other little tools have popped up. Single row marquee tool. We don't necessarily need to know what all of these do this morning. This is just the concepts behind working with tools. This is telling me that these 2 are hidden and lurking somewhere, but haven't yet been fully installed into your application. I'm going to click on Edit Toolbar. This opens up quite an interesting toolbar or dialog box, if you're as geeky as I am. You can see all of the letters that are used to trigger these different tools. These are the keyboard shortcuts down the right-hand side of this column. The 2 tools that are currently not installed in my Photoshop application are sitting in the Extra Tools section. I do actually use these 2 tools, so I'm going to put them into the group that they would naturally sit with. So these are the items that have got the M against them. These are marquee tools. I'll drag those in, and these will now become available to me when I move over to my screen on the left-hand side and actually click the marquee buttons. If you use a tool regularly, for example, let's just go for the magic wand. Most of us know what the magic wand can do, and if you don't, that'll be on one of the next workshops. Magic Wand is sitting with 3 other buttons. It sits with the Object Selection tool, the Quick Selection tool, and it sits here. But if you use it a lot, you can click on it and drag it to a space between 2 groups of buttons. So now it's got its own prime position on my toolbar, which is quite good. And I do tend to do that. Any questions on the toolbars? Mark, you said
No,
there
we
was
don't have any
questions.
questions at all. I was just going to say we've had lots of wonderful people, lots of people say how wonderful this is. So no problems at all. We've got one person said that their contextual toolbar is grayed out, but someone else jumped in to say that that's because they didn't have an image open.
Yeah.
That's why. But no other questions. Thank you.
And the contextual toolbar is going to be taken by the scruff of its neck in a minute, and I'm going to show you why you should keep it on your screen, how you can lock it on your screen, and how to stop it being irritating so that you love it and actually use it properly.
Does that just apply to toolbars, or is that a general thing?
It's a general thing.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, do it with grandchildren, husbands, vacuum cleaners,
Thank you.
and bean bags, which Mark will know a lot about.
Thank you.
Okay, are you guys all right with this? And also at the bottom of the customized toolbar box, if you think that your 3 dots were never there in the first place, then you can get to the edit tools option from your edit menu. If you want your color swatches to be there, make sure they're there. And also there are a few other extra buttons that I would definitely make sure that you have showing. They all are useful. And unless you're finding an overload, then go with it. If you really want to restore it back to the factory settings, then risk it and click Restore Defaults. You can also clear the tools and start again. And I'll talk about presets as we move into this workshop. I don't want to go into too much detail on any topic this morning. I'm happy to click Done. Okay. Options bar. Let's just click on any tool, people. It really doesn't matter which one you go for. Just click one tool and you will find that that toolbar across the top is called your options bar. And the options bar always shows you the home button. And actually, I love that home button. If I'm trying to bring in an image that I worked on yesterday into this one, I'll quickly click the home button and I can access another file that I recently worked on. But the next button along shows you which tool you've got selected, but it also has 2 incredibly useful features. Let me go for the brush, actually. I'm just going to click the paintbrush tool. Whenever you use a tool in Photoshop, it remembers the settings from the last time you used it. It doesn't matter if you haven't opened Photoshop for 6 weeks. If you used a brush 6 weeks ago, it will remember that that was the last brush that you used. And it may not be the brush that you want to use right this very minute. So right-click on the tool that you are currently using and choose the first option to reset the tool. Just before I do that, notice that the paintbrush that I used last time was being used at not full strength, so its opacity is set to 27%. But as soon as I click Reset Tool, any of these features, the size, the hardness of the brush, will all be reset back to their basics, to their factory settings. And that, for me, is really useful because you then get a nice soft round brush. We're going to talk about the drop down on another workshop, but these presets, I can't tell you how useful they are. They're different to saving tools. For example, you can save brushes into your brush folders, but you can also save presets just for quick use. And when we get to the brushes workshop, I'll show you how to use this preset button. Okay. Is your options bar showing? Let's go to the window menu and just check. The window menu, if your options bar isn't ticked on that menu, your options bar is going to disappear. So let's bring that back. Window options. You can move the options toolbar around, but it doesn't dock anywhere except back to that top position. So you grab it by the left edge of it, slowly move it up to the top of the screen. And only when you see that blue bar coming up, which tells you that you're definitely not pregnant, click on it and it docks back into that particular position. All good? Okay, let's move on to panels. Panels in Photoshop are designed to give you additional information, features, functions about certain aspects of Photoshop. I'm going to go to the Windows menu and I'm going to go to Workspaces because your options bar, your toolbar, and all of the panels on the right-hand side form a collection called a workspace. The default workspace for Photoshop is the Essentials workspace. Yours will look very different to mine because I've created lots of different workspaces, which I'll talk about in just a second. But I'm going to click Essentials Default. Now, it hasn't really reset my screen back. I've still got some panels lurking around and floating all over the screen. So in addition to choosing the workspace that you want to work in, you'll also need to go back to the Windows menu and Workspace, where you will see the workspace that you've chosen is ticked, but it's not fully reset back to the way that Photoshop would like you to have it laid out. So I'm going to click Reset Essentials. Now I get a screen which is the way that Photoshop thinks that photographers should work. And on the right-hand side, it's giving me collections of panels, colour, swatches, gradients and patterns, all in one collection. The properties of whatever I've got selected, adjustments and libraries. And then below that, 3 further panels, layers, channels and paths. And they're specifically in groups because that's the way that Adobe thinks that I want to work. If you want to move an entire group around, then make sure that your mouse pointer is actually over the blank area of a group. And we can pull the whole group out so that we can work with it closer to the document, for example. An individual panel can also be moved. I'll click on the tab for that panel and drag it away from the group. It can take quite a long time to get your workspace exactly as you want it. But my recommendation would be spend 15 minutes deciding which panels you think you would use most often. I use the Layers panel and I use the History panel. The History panel's not being displayed. Any panel that's currently switched off can always be accessed from the window menu. And I'll just come down and look at those that have got ticks on them and those that haven't. I like my History panel to be around. I clicked on it. Oh, it's coming with comments. Let's pull it out of that group and just bring it down and put it on its own. And I want to make my own group. I'll move the History panel up and glue it into the History panel. I've now got my own small group, which I'm much happier with. Are you guys okay with this? I mean, I could go on for hours just talking about panels, but
no, we've had a quick comment about why you'd want to do this, but actually, from my point of view, it's about streamlining the workspace, isn't it, to make it more efficient for your own approach? So everybody's interface will look quite different, ideally, I suppose, Celia, won't they?
It will. And what I've done in Photoshop is I have used the X to close down all panels that I don't want open. So a couple of seconds, drag them around. You've also got a menu item against a group, which will allow you to close the entire tab group down or just close an individual panel. I'm going to close that tab group down. I'm going to do the same with this last group, close it down. My screen is looking much cleaner. I'll pick that little group up, slowly take it over to the right-hand side, wait for the blue bar to appear and for it to be docked. That's how I want to start Photoshop when it starts up. I've got the right tools on the panel down the left-hand side. I've got the right panels open, which are not overwhelming me. So my final job is to go to the window menu, back to my workspace, and I'm actually going to save this as a completely new workspace. I'm going to click on Workspace, New Workspace. I'm going to give it a name. I'll call it the Canvasation Photoshop series. If I've made keyboard shortcuts, which I know we haven't got to yet, and I haven't customized any menus, but I have customized my toolbar, I would want to make sure that those have also been saved with this workspace. I'm going to click Save. So now when I've been messing around and I've got umpteen different panels open, and the toolbar's somehow got knocked off its original spot, and the screen's just a total mess, I'll come back to Window, into Workspace. I'll make sure that my Conversation PS series is the workspace that I want to work with. And I'll come down and I'll reset that Conversation PS series. And now my screen is back to being as clean and tidy as it should be.
That's really, really useful. Thank you. And really glad that you went back and showed us how to access those panels as well. So it's back to the window, isn't it? And dropping down to re-access those panels as well. Thank you. Excellent.
Everything this morning, or this today, is coming from the Windows menu. Options, tools. We're going to do the contextual taskbar in a second, the workspace area, and the different panels or palettes or whatever you want to call them, which can be activated and deactivated according to the task that you're working with.
Super. Thank you very much. Loving this. Thank you.
Okay. All of this, by the way, is in the handouts, particularly how to create your own workspaces and how to save them, how to reset. Now, the contextual taskbar. The contextual taskbar is movable. First of all, make sure it's switched on. Windows menu, contextual taskbar. And as somebody rightly said, if it's greyed out, it's because you've got no documents selected. You have to have something open for the contextual taskbar to be able to do its job. The contextual taskbar is designed to try to follow your workflow. It's very cheeky. Now, first thing is it drives people bonkers because suddenly it's up here, suddenly it's down there, it's over there. So step one, open up your contextual taskbar, pick it up, and decide where you think it would be most useful to you. I prefer it down in the bottom left-hand corner of the interface. And then go to the three dots at the end of it and click this button, Pin Bar Position. Now it will not jump around at all. It stays there regardless of what you do, and it's always in that same spot. Okay, so far?
Thank you.
For those of you that have got so fed up with it, you've probably either closed it or you've somehow managed to find the hide bar option. I'll show you what happens. You click hide bar. And now you think, do you know what? After I've watched a couple of workshops, I saw something on YouTube and it was really useful to see. I'm just going to zoom up. And actually, that was quite a useful bar. All you have to do is take your mouse into the right edge of your, this is called the canvas area. The area off the document is useful for quite a few things. And if you right click on it, regardless of which tool you've got selected, it will first of all show you that you can put your contextual taskbar back on and off. And because it's pinned, it will go back to where it should have been. So if you are cheesed off with it, you can just click the dots here and go, actually, go away. But when you want it back, just do a quick right click down in any area of your canvas bar and just show contextual taskbar. And the other reason I wanted to right click in this area is when I'm looking at my images and perhaps I'm going to print them or frame them or put some kind of mount on them, particularly with a black image, do I want this grey canvas bar? Would it be better if I looked at this on a black background? So right click and you can change your background quickly to help you get an idea of what this image actually looks like. I actually prefer the light grey, but you can set it to whatever you want it to. Oh, now I've lost my contextual toolbar. Let's go back again and show it. Next thing with the contextual taskbar. You're right, I'm going at 100 miles an hour because I hate doing these 90-minute or 40-minute sessions. I've got far too much to tell you.
Let's go for it. No, we love it. Let's go for
it. Okay, right. So when the contextual bar is visible, it will start off, if you've got nothing on your image selected, it will start off usually by saying, do you want to select your subject? Do you want to remove the background? So there it's default starting points. So once you click something, let's go for select subject and see what happens. Okay, so it's selected the subject. I'm not worried about working through this particular workflow, but I've clicked select subject. But now, because it's got marching ants around that selection, it's changed its tools because it's a contextual taskbar. Do you want to fill that selection with some kind of generative fill? Or would you rather modify that selection? So you get sensible, useful buttons. If you want to modify it, it's going to give you the quick selection tool in order to modify your selection. Do you want to invert your selection? Let me click that. Now we've got the opposite selected. Do you want to add a mask from that selection? Would you like to fill the selection with a different colour? Would you like to try an adjustment layer on it? Or finally, would you like to deselect your selection? So I like the contextual toolbar, and I hope now I've given you some ideas about it, you'll like it too. Let me click the paintbrush tool, and I'm just going to add a new layer to my document. I'm going to cover all of this properly. I'm not just going to randomly go off and start doing things, but I have just added a new layer and I've selected a paintbrush. And I'm just going to make my paintbrush a bit bigger, and I'm just going to paint across it. Nothing's changed down here, but you will find that as you work with certain tools, that the contextual toolbar will change, and it's designed to change and try to follow what you're doing. I think it's just looked at my image and go, I've got no idea what she's trying to do, so I'll just stay quiet in the background. But hopefully you get the idea of what's going on here. Now, couple of actual tools which we decided to start with for this particular workshop. I'm actually just going to, I'm going to leave that layer with that paintbrush on there for a second. There's the hand tool. Now, the hand tool has a very useful keyboard shortcut. Let me zoom my screen up, Control and plus. I want to be able to pan my screen down so I can look at the bottom of the screen. With a paintbrush tool selected, of course, it will start painting all over because as soon as I click, that's what it's designed to do. But if you want to move anything, which would require the hand tool to be selected, just hold your space bar down. So my space bar is held down, and you can see that my brush is now changing to give me a hand. I don't mean to actually help me, it's giving me a hand icon. And I can click and drag while the space bar is down, and I can pan around my screen. So it's temporarily switching my paintbrush to the hand tool. But let's have a look at the hand tool. I'll click on it and select the hand tool. Now there are two tools hidden under the hand tool. One's called the rotate view, which we're going to look at, and one is the hand tool. When you've got the hand tool selected, you've got a couple of buttons here on the options toolbar. Now most of these are fairly self-explanatory. Fill the screen. That would fill the screen with whatever it can find that it thinks is most useful. So it found that layer and thought, I'll fill it with that for you. Fit screen brings it back down to fill the screen itself. Let's view this at 100%. They're all the same keyboard shortcuts that we looked at under the zoom commands earlier on. But what's this scroll or windows? Well, I want to show you a really useful button. I'm going to click Fit to Screen. When I'm working in Photoshop, quite often I'm looking at something very detailed. Anybody that knows me well will know that that's a complete and utter lie. But anyway, I'll just say that anyway. I'm going to click the window menu, and I'm going to go back to show you this option here, Window Arrange. And I'm going to open up my Tulip in two windows. I'm going to go for New Window for Tulip. Well, nothing seems to have happened, except if you look at the canvas bar across the screen, the Tulip's open twice. Let's put the two windows side by side. Window Arrange, and we'll just pop them next to each other with two up vertical. You're working on the same file, whatever you do will be applied to both windows. You're just looking at it twice. But do you notice that one window is smaller than the other? I'm going to click on the window on my left-hand side and just zoom this one up a little bit, Control and plus. Let's go right up. I'm going to use my space bar and just move that around. So I'm trying to see this little area of very out of focus raindrops, and I wonder what would happen if I was to make a change to them. I'll add a new layer from my layers panel, and I'll use something that's visible. It won't make any sense, obviously, but let me just click the paintbrush tool. And let me just paint on this left-hand window with my paintbrush. So I'm painting away in a very detailed area. But if you look on the right-hand side, I get the impact of what that would actually look like for the image as a whole. I use two windows quite often when I'm editing because it allows me to look at different parts of the image. So if I come back to the second window and we zoom this one up, and let me move that to a different location, I can look at two different parts of the document. It might be that I wanted to get the colour from one side and transfer it to the other. Using two windows of the same image is a very powerful way of doing some very accurate editing. But you'll remember I had the hand tool selected. So the hand tool allows us to pan or scroll. So now this button, I hope, makes more sense. Scroll all windows. When that's selected and the hand tool is selected, if I click and drag, they're both going to move in a synchronized way. Apart from that, it makes you look, relatively intelligent if somebody walks past you in the office. Other than that, I can't think of anything. Now,
this is excellent. With feedback on this is wonderful. I had no idea how to do this either. It's so good to do this. You must, what a great idea to see the big picture and those small edits as well.
Okay. Now, under the window and arrange option, you've also got, let's match the zoom between the two windows, or let's match the location. So arrange, match the location. Now I can see both windows. And if one was zoomed up and one was zoomed down, it would still zoom me into the same location. I don't know whether I've just gone too geeky too much. I don't know. Perhaps I just need to get out more.
This is a safe environment. We love geekiness.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Now, the last, I've got 10 minutes and I want to show you this one because I think it's unbelievably useful for those of you that do anything really artistic. Well, it doesn't matter whether you do artistic or not. I'm going to close down one of these canvases. So the two canvases have both got the same name. That's because they are the same file. And when you close one of those down, I'll just click the X on the right-hand side. Don't worry about the fact that you weren't asked if you want to save your changes. You haven't actually closed the file down. I'm going to press Control and 0. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm trying to draw something or select something which needs to go from top to bottom or bottom to top, it's really hard to do something in that direction. We're actually designed to move from left to right. So don't think of this as rotating your document. Think of this as picking up the picture on your desk and physically turning it round so that when you write on it or draw on it, it's changed angle. So I'm going to go to the hand tool and use the rotate view tool. You can also just press the letter R whenever you're working on the computer. Press the R. And when you press the R, the little hand tool displays an arrow. And I'm just going to drag that around and you get the compass. Now I'm going to let that go. So now I want to perhaps do something on this document, and I'll just grab a different colour so that you can see what I'm doing. And now I want to go down that stem. Let me just grab the paintbrush. I find it so much easier when I'm working with tools that require me to work in a detailed way to actually work from left to right. So now I can go along that edge, but I'm not having to go up and down. And when I've finished, I'll put the document back the right way round. And over on the rotate toolbars on the left, we can just double click the rotate tool. You should be able to double click the rotate tool. Oh no, you select it and just choose reset view from the top, and we're back to where we were. I have finished other than 1 minute on the zoom tool, if you can cope with it. And
We'll give you 1 minute. No, you can take as long as you need. Thank you.
Excellent. So that was the hand tool, which I've just clicked on, and I've set that back to the hand tool. And what I'm going to do last is just select the zoom tool. Now the zoom tool, both the hand tool and the zoom tool are safe tools in as much as you won't accidentally draw a red line all over your image, which you'll have to undo. If you use the zoom tool or the hand tool, it doesn't really matter what you click and drag on, you're not going to damage anything. So I would always use those, if you can, as your default tool. So just press the letter H or the letter Z on your keyboard, and you deselect any of the more destructive tools that you might have down here. So really, there's not very much for me to show you. It's got very similar buttons to 100% fit screen, the same as the hand tool. It's got zoom all windows, which means that if we have multiple windows open, you would zoom in and zoom out on all of those open windows. We can resize the windows to fit. So as I click, whoops, not quite sure what I did there. Let's come back to fit to screen. And then the very last button I wanted to show you is what this scrubby zoom does. When you're on the zoom tool and you've got your magnifying glass, if you click, it'll just zoom up a little bit. If you click and drag, it creates a section that will then zoom up for you to be able to see more clearly. Let me just fit to screen again. If you've got scrubby zoom switched on, as you click and drag, you don't get the choice of the area that you want to zoom up. It literally starts zooming up as you click and drag. So I'll come down to here, click and drag, and it just keeps zooming it in and zooming it out. That's the difference between scrubby zoom and not the scrubby zoom. That is, wow.
Fantastic. We need a round of applause, by the way.
I was just impressed with my own timing because I hadn't actually timed it. So.
Oh, no, that's absolutely outstanding. Well done. Well done. And obviously, if anybody would like to put any final comments in the chat for Celia, please do so. I will share this with you afterwards, Celia. There's one query from Charlotte Bellamy. I'm going to hold on to that query because I think it's a wider query that's going on as well. And I think if I get a proper answer to it, we can answer it in the next session, because there may be other people who have that problem working with 2 monitors as well. So thank you very much. And Celia, we're going to have to wait until next week, aren't we, for this?
For the next one.
But you may be joining us, other people in here may be joining us on Wednesday as well. But otherwise, Celia, outstanding. I will just say, and I've been told to say this, not by Celia, because we wouldn't do this, but by 2 other people, said, I don't do enough to say how good the handouts are. And Celia and I don't do hard sells. It's not the kind of people we are, but I have said in the email that you would thoroughly enjoy the handout. So please do go and have a look at that as well. So Celia, outstanding as usual.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
I look forward to seeing you again soon. And thank you very much, everybody, as well.
Okay. See you guys soon. Thank you for coming. Bye.
Bye-bye.